Welcome to Honeybee, real stories of love, lies, and betrayal, where every truth stings. Let's begin. My name is Raphael, and for 8 years I lived on the belief that I had a flawless marriage. Quinn and I first crossed paths during college, and not long after graduation we tied the knot. Together, we built what I thought was a stable and promising life. We had respectable jobs, a lovely house in the suburbs, and what appeared to be a bright future ahead of us. I worked at a reputable real estate company, while Quinn held a position as an accountant at a mid-sized firm downtown. In the beginning, everything between us felt smooth and easy. Quinn often texted me throughout the day, sending little jokes, funny pictures, or notes reminding me that she cared. She remembered small details about things I mentioned and went out of her way to show that she was invested in our relationship. She gave off every impression of being a wife who truly cared about making our marriage work. Like any couple, we faced occasional disagreements, but nothing that seemed serious. The only recurring challenge was her mood swings, which came on unexpectedly and could linger for a few days. During those times, she grew distant, but eventually she would bounce back. She usually blamed stress from work or simply exhaustion. I always tried to cheer her up, whether by suggesting dinner out, planning a weekend escape, or simply sitting with her in hopes it would lighten her mood. The cruel reality of betrayal is that it blindsides you. When you place your trust wholeheartedly in someone you don't expect to see. Looking back, maybe there were hints I overlooked. But when you truly believe someone loves you as deeply as you love them, you don't spend your days searching for cracks in their words. Quinn's job had always demanded a lot from her, particularly during tax season or major audits. She often came home drained, venting about her boss or clients who pushed her to the limit. I did my best to be supportive and listen. When her late nights at the office began happening more often, I assumed it was simply the nature of her workload. I figured this phase would eventually pass, but her late nights didn't stop. What started as the occasional late return stretched into a regular pattern. Around 5 p.m., she'd text me saying she had to stay until 8 or 9. Soon, it became 10 or 11. There were even nights she came home past midnight, looking exhausted, explaining it away with endless excuses. Despite this, Quinn didn't withdraw from me entirely. She remained affectionate, still made plans for weekend together, and never failed to tell me she loved me. She seemed convincing in her role, giving me no reason to doubt her words. Meanwhile, my own job in real estate was unpredictable. At times, I had to stay late to meet with clients or finalize deals, but I also enjoyed some flexibility, leaving early once in a while if I'd managed to close good business. Out of habit, I always texted Quinn before heading home, and she typically did the same. One Thursday in March, things shifted. I had been working all week on a complicated deal that required long hours and multiple meetings with developers. That morning, my boss told me the client had postponed our Friday meeting, freeing up my afternoon unexpectedly. Once I wrapped up a few loose ends, I realized I could head home earlier than usual. I called Quinn to let her know. Her reaction caught me off guard. There was a pause, almost as though she wasn't expecting me to have extra time. I asked about her day, like I always did, and she said she was swamped. She told me she probably wouldn't be home until 9 or 10 that evening. I offered to pick up dinner to save her the trouble of cooking after a long day, and she agreed but sounded distracted. Before we hung up, she rushed off, claiming she had to finish some reports. I told her I loved her, and she said it back, though it felt hurried. Sitting in my car afterward, I couldn't shake the odd feeling that something was off. Quinn, it sounded like she couldn't wait to end the call. Later that afternoon, after a shower and responding to work emails, I decided to do something thoughtful to cheer her up. Quinn adored the cinnamon rolls from a coffee shop near her office, so I thought I'd surprise her with those and her favorite coffee to help her through her long night at work. When I arrived, the shop was busy, but I didn't mind waiting. Once the barista packed everything neatly, I drove to Quinn's building, feeling a mix of excitement and affection at the thought of surprising her. I knew the place well. I had picked her up for lunch there many times. But as I walked into the lobby, the receptionist looked puzzled. She greeted me politely, then asked if I was there for Quinn. I explained I had brought her a coffee and a snack since I knew she had a hectic day. The receptionist's expression shifted, almost uncertain. Then she told me Quinn had left earlier in the afternoon, saying she was feeling unwell and needed to go home because of painful cramps. It felt like the ground opened beneath me. I asked again if she was sure Quinn had left. She confirmed, explaining Quinn had looked uncomfortable and insisted she needed rest. I stood frozen, clutching the coffee and pastry in my hands. Hours earlier, Quinn had told me she'd be working late. Yet she'd already gone home sick? Why wouldn't she tell me? If she were truly sick, she would have called me, asked me to bring her medicine, or asked me to take care of her. I stumbled back to my car, my thoughts spinning wildly. My instinct was to find a logical explanation, but deep down, I knew something didn't add up. Sitting in the garage, I decided to test her story. I called Quinn, masking my voice with casual small talk. I pretended I was trying to remember the recipe she'd used for a chicken dish she made last week and wanted to make it again for her. She asked which recipe I meant, and I described it vaguely. She promised to send me the link later, but then quickly added that she and her coworker Karen were stuck in a conference room, drowning in audit reports under their boss's pressure. Her words stung. They were convincing, complete with details about Karen, someone I knew she worked with. The only problem was I already knew she wasn't at the office. The receptionist had confirmed she had left hours ago. After hanging up, I sat with my phone in my hands, feeling sick. She had lied directly, effortlessly. For a moment, I thought of just driving home. But something inside me urged me to dig deeper. Then I remembered to find my app. Over a year earlier, Quinn and I had linked our phones for convenience, since we often misplaced them. I'd never used it to track her before. I'd never had a reason not to trust her. But that night, holding a cooling coffee cup in my hand, I opened the app. My location popped up first, the downtown garage. Then Quinn's. My stomach dropped. She wasn't at work, and she wasn't at home. The app showed her at a hotel about 20 minutes away, in a part of town that had no connection to her job or any normal routine. I stared at the blinking dot on the map, my chest tight. There was no innocent explanation for this. I could have called her, demanded an answer, but something stopped me. I knew if I confronted her now, she'd twist the truth, come up with excuses, and somehow make me feel guilty. Instead, I decided I needed undeniable proof. I drove to the hotel. It was an upscale place, the type business travelers used. The lot was large enough that I could circle around without attracting attention. After 10 minutes, I found her car parked toward the back, away from the main entrance. I parked a few spots away and took photos. Clear shots of her car, including the license plate, and even a short video capturing her vehicle with the hotel in the background. As I documented the evidence, I felt numb. 8 years of marriage. And here I was, photographing proof that my wife was spending time in a hotel with someone else. The drive home afterward felt endless. My mind replayed every late-night excuse, every work trip, every time she had come home looking exhausted. How long had this been happening? How many lies had I swallowed without realizing it? When I finally got home, I forced myself to act normal. I changed clothes, made a simple sandwich, and turned on the TV. Quinn came home around 9:30, earlier than she claimed she would, but still late enough to fit her story. I heard her car pull into the driveway. Then she walked in, carrying herself like someone who had endured a long, tiring day at work. Her makeup smudged, clothes wrinkled, her face showing the same weary expression she always wore after dealing with clients. But I knew it was all an act. She asked me how my day had been. A normal question, something we asked each other every day. Yet, hearing it that night, knowing she had just been with another man, made me feel sick. Still, I answered flatly, avoiding her eyes. Quinn seemed to expect me to ask about her day. But when I didn't, she launched into her story anyway. She spoke about how terrible her day had been, how she and Karen had been trapped in a conference room all evening, buried in files while their boss hovered over them. Her story was flawless, filled with believable frustrations and names I recognized. If I hadn't gone to her office, if I hadn't tracked her location, if I hadn't seen her car at that hotel, I would have believed her, but instead I said nothing. She tried to engage me further, asking small questions to pull me into conversation, but I kept my responses short. Eventually, she gave up and went upstairs to shower. When she returned, she found me in the guest bedroom. She stood in the doorway, confused, wearing her pajamas. She asked why I was in there and whether she had done something wrong. The irony almost made me laugh. Did she really think I was upset over something small? She had lied to me repeatedly that very night, yet stood there acting puzzled. I told her I needed space. She lingered, trying to figure out what was happening, but eventually said goodnight and walked back to our room. That night, I barely slept. I lay awake, turning over the lies in my head, not just the ones from that day, but likely from months before. I thought about what I should do next. I could confront her, show her the photos, scream, demand an explanation, or beg her to stop. But something inside me had shifted. Maybe it was the ease with which she lied. Maybe it was realizing that the woman I thought I had known for 8 years was nothing more than a stranger. Whatever the reason, I knew confronting her wasn't the answer. She had made her choice. Now I needed to make mine. The following morning, Quinn acted as though nothing unusual had happened. She brewed coffee, asked about my schedule for the day, and casually mentioned she might have to work late again. She still seemed puzzled about why I had slept in the guest room, but she chose not to press the issue too hard. I didn't engage much in conversation. Instead, I quietly watched her, thinking about everything I now knew. Once she left for work, I called my office and told them I wasn't feeling well. I needed the day to think. I sat in the living room, staring at nothing for a while before finally opening my laptop. For the first time in my life, I typed the words "divorce lawyer near me" into a search bar. It felt surreal. I had never seriously considered divorce before, even during arguments or rough patches. The thought had never crossed my mind. But now, looking at pages of attorneys specializing in infidelity cases, I knew it was the only way forward. After reading countless websites, I settled on an attorney who had more than 15 years of experience handling divorces involving cheating. Her profile gave me some reassurance, describing how she guided clients through the emotional and financial challenges of ending marriages. I called her office, briefly explained my situation, and she agreed to meet me that very afternoon. When I arrived, I was met by a woman in her 40s with a calm but direct demeanor. Something about her professionalism put me at ease. I laid everything out, showed her the photos and videos I had taken, explained Quinn's lies, and said plainly that I wanted a divorce. She studied the evidence carefully, then told me I had a strong case for adultery that would likely work in my favor during the property division and other legal proceedings. She asked if Quinn had any idea I knew about the affair. I told her no. Quinn believed I was just upset about something small. The attorney advised me to keep it that way until we were ready to serve her. That way, Quinn wouldn't have time to hide assets or manipulate the situation. The next 2 weeks were some of the hardest of my life. I lived under the same roof with Quinn, pretending as if nothing had changed. She kept lying, coming home late, inventing stories about her workload. She kept trying to draw me into conversations, asking why I was so quiet, sometimes growing frustrated when I refused to explain myself. One evening, she stormed into our bedroom, claiming I was being distant for no reason. She had no idea I was preparing to end everything. 3 weeks after meeting my attorney, the paperwork was ready. The documents requested an equitable division of our property and explicitly cited Quinn's adultery as the ground for divorce. My attorney asked me one final time if I was sure. She reminded me that once Quinn received the papers, there would be no going back to normal. I didn't hesitate. I was ready. We arranged for the papers to be served at her office. The irony wasn't lost on me. Quinn would likely be sitting there, planning another excuse to slip away and meet her lover, when a process server would hand her documents that would shatter her carefully constructed lies. It happened on a Thursday afternoon around 4 o'clock. I wasn't there, but I knew the exact moment Quinn got the papers, because my phone lit up instantly. She called 6 times in a row. I ignored them. Then came a flood of text messages, asking what was going on, demanding I call her, insisting she didn't understand. She pleaded for me to respond, asked if I was serious, begged for us to talk. I stayed silent. For the first time in months, Quinn came home early. She walked in clutching the divorce papers, her face flushed and eyes wide with shock. Standing in the doorway, she demanded to know what this was. I was seated in the living room. Calmly, I told her they were divorce papers. She snapped back, saying she could see that but wanted to know why. She claimed she didn't understand, that she knew I'd been upset but thought this was insane. She asked if I was really ending our marriage just because I was mad at her about something small I wouldn't even tell her. I looked at her and saw a stranger. This woman standing in my living room, acting confused and hurt, had been lying to me for months, maybe longer. She had smiled at me while sneaking behind my back. She had made me feel guilty for being distant when, all along, she was the one tearing our marriage apart. Quietly, I told her I knew about the hotel. The shift in her face was immediate. The confusion drained away, replaced by sheer panic. She asked what hotel. Her voice faltered, her confidence gone. I didn't answer with words. Instead, I pulled out my phone and showed her the photos, the images of her car in a hotel parking lot, the video of the license plate with the hotel in the background, and the screenshot from the Find My app showing her exact location that day. She stared at the screen, her face crumbling. Then she whispered that she could explain. But I cut her off. No, you can't. I told her how I had gone to her office that day, how the receptionist told me she had left early claiming to be sick, how she had lied straight to me on the phone, saying she was stuck in a conference room with Karen, while I already knew she wasn't even in the building. For the next hour, Quinn tried everything she could to save herself. First, she minimized what had happened, insisted it was a mistake, meaningless, something that didn't matter. Then she turned the blame on me. She said I had been distant, inattentive, that she had felt neglected. She cried, begged, promised it would never happen again. She said she'd do anything if I'd just give her another chance. But I was done. Every word that left her mouth sounded like another manipulation, another performance. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I simply refused to let her twist the truth any longer. Over the month that followed, the divorce dragged on. Quinn tried every tactic, pleading, stalling, even attempting to guilt me into reconsidering. But my attorney was prepared for all of it. The evidence of her affair was undeniable, and it worked in my favor at every stage. Eventually, I learned who her lover was, a man in commercial real estate, someone I only vaguely recognized. I had no idea how they had met or how long it had been going on. At that point, it didn't matter anymore. The legal side of things wasn't the hardest part. The paperwork, the property division, the logistics. They were stressful, yes, but manageable. The real challenge was emotional. Coming to terms with the fact that the person I had loved, trusted, and built a life with was never who I thought she was. Looking back, what gave me strength wasn't shouting or confronting her. It was silence. My decision to stay quiet, to gather proof, to prepare my own time. That had been my power. Quinn had spent 3 weeks squirming, knowing something was wrong, but having no idea what I knew or what I was planning. That silence broke her more than any heated fight could have. When the divorce was finalized, I felt sadness, of course, but alongside it was relief. I was finally free. Free from a marriage built on deception. Free from the weight of her lies. Free from a woman who could betray me with a straight face. 1 year later, I find myself in a far better place. I've learned something profound. When someone betrays you, sometimes the strongest response isn't to argue, to beg, or to fight for what's already broken. Sometimes the strongest response is quiet resolve. To protect yourself, to make your own plans, and to let your actions speak louder than any words. In the end, my silence said everything that needed to be said.